why, as a solo artist, is it such a struggle to constantly finish quality music? Because as a solo artist, if you don't have a producer and you don't have collaborators and you're on your own, then you're doing everything, obviously. And that means that you're essentially in conversation with yourself, with your opinion in any given moment. Because what else do we have to go on? Oh, I think this isn't working, so I need to change it. Oh, I think this is great, so I need to build on it. The problem, though, is that your opinion sucks. Your opinion is unreliable. Your opinion is changing day to day, sometimes moment to moment. So you start a track, oh, it's brilliant. Oh, this is the best thing I've ever done. Oh, it's absolutely amazing. And then on day two, you listen back to it and you're like, what was I thinking? This is terrible. I mean, it might not be as extreme as this, but there is some version of this going on all the time. And then on day three, we're like, I don't know, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. On day four, you're like, oh, no, it's brilliant. And then on day five, you're like, oh, yes, I'm the best thing ever. Up and down, around in circles, and we don't know what is going on. Sometimes it's not days. Sometimes it can happen for weeks. So in other words, we love it for weeks, for a couple of weeks. Then all of a sudden we come to our senses and we go, oh no, it's terrible. But have we come to our senses? Were we right when we loved it? Or were we right when we hated it? Were we right when we liked it? Or were we right when we weren't so sure? And how do we decide which opinion is the right one? Think about that. How do you decide which opinion is the right one? The way that you decide which opinion is the right one when you really look is it's very hard not to believe the opinion you have in your mind at that moment. The reason for that is that one of the things that our brain is good at is resource allocation. Our brain doesn't like expending needless resources. Okay? And something that is present is easier for our brain to process than something that isn't present. So in other words, an opinion we have right now is easier for us to have than one we had in the past. So we will default to the opinion we have now. So in other words, naturally, we go, I love it. Oh yeah, that's true. I love it. This is brilliant. And then the next day, oh, I hate it. I was wrong yesterday, but I'm right now. And then the next day, oh, I love it. It's absolutely brilliant. Right, I'm right now. I was wrong yesterday. And then the next day, well, I'm not sure about it now. I'm right now. I was wrong yesterday. Why? Tell me why has no one questioned this? I have looked and I haven't seen anybody talk about this very strange thing that is displayed to anyone who creates anything, including music, on a daily basis. That our opinion is constantly changing, and yet our judgments are the one thing that we use to move forward, and we believe them almost without question. That's the default anyway. Why does no one talk about this? I mean, it is possible to make great music this way because people have, often with other producers and everything. But when you listen to great musicians talk, it's like they've not had this realization. I didn't have it for like 20 years. But in a sense, I knew because it was my experience that my opinion was changing, but I didn't actually understand or take the steps to think, what does that understanding that our opinion is always changing actually mean for the creative process? What it took was me giving up music and coaching people for years. I think it was about 5 years when I started to hang on a minute. This is a very strange situation where people are just like, I'm right now. I'm right now. I'm right now. I'm right now. How can you be right when you have opposing opinions? So I set about thinking, okay, so what is the solution to this? Because we do have to use our judgments. Yeah, we do have to use our opinion, even though it's unreliable. So it's like these two contradictory things. We have to trust ourselves as artists, as solo artists. We have to trust ourselves at the same time as not trusting ourselves. So, what is the solution? Well, there's a number of different solutions which in the music machine I've embedded. One is we use quantity to discover quality. If you're zeroed in on one piece of music, right, and you put all of your hopes and dreams when you're working on it into this piece of music, what's that going to do to your opinion? It's going to distort how you're listening to your music. If you attach all of this, is that an objective state? No. An objective state is, just much less, not detached, but just non-attached. So how do we non-attach? By making loads of ideas. Because if we've got loads of ideas, there isn't all of this psychological pressure on just one. So we make loads of ideas. We work on lots of music. On that note, we gain distance from the music through cycling, and we are able to work on lots of pieces of music through cycling through the music. So, for example, making an album, when you're in the second stage of the machine in discovery, you're cycling through a lot of music at the same time. But because you're working on lots of pieces of music and because you're cycling through them, number one, you don't have so much pressure on these ideas, which have so much potential. You don't have so much pressure on that, and you're gaining distance from them. So you're able to be less attached, more objective. Again, you're never 100% objective by definition, because you are the subject making the music, but you are able to be more objective. When you listen to what you have done, so obviously you export the session, you put it down, you don't listen to it in between, you cycle through, and when you listen the next time, when you're actually listening, the first time you're listening, you're not judging, even though you have judgmental thoughts, it's not like you're taking notes when you're listening, right? Because that's, again, putting judgment in front of the listening. Because what isn't changing is the music. You've exported the file, you're listening to something that is fixed, even though your judgments are changing all the time. So you listen first before deciding what your judgments are. So you're simply listening to the sound. That's direct listening. And you're getting those judgments out of your head. So after direct listening, you are then making the notes. And people are, what if I don't remember everything? Saying that to yourself will mean you don't, number one. But the other thing is you can practice. Yeah, you'll start to remember things. And anyway, even if you don't remember everything, when you listen to it, if it's a big problem, you'll notice it when you're actually making the music. So you get the judgments out of your head, you write them down. So what that is doing is it, instead of being in your head, because remember, when it's in your head, the judgment is changing all the time. You have a judgment, you put it onto a piece of paper or into Trello or into a checklist. You say, this is what I'm going to do, or here's what I think about this. So now that judgment is fixed. It doesn't mean it's right, but you have logged it. So again, this is creating that distance between you and the judgments, between the music and the judgments. So you've got the music, you've got your judgments written down, and we separate the judging from the doing. So in other words, you listen, you make some judgments, you decide what to do, you write that stuff down in the machine, you have a session plan, and then you can just go into the session and do without judging. You just do the thing that you said you were going to do. Whether it's good or not, you don't know, because your judgments are always changing. This is the purpose of learning splurging in the first place. One of the reasons to learn splurging in the first place is that we want to take that approach and start applying it to the rest of the process. Because what doesn't change is the fact that our judgments are unreliable and always changing. But by doing this, it's almost like we're no longer in our head, the slave to every single thought and feeling that we have, which often aren't about the music. It's like we're seeing them as part of the process, and we're able to pick and choose. Oh, I was wrong about that. Actually, it was much better. It was much better before, because we are kind of taking a third person perspective. It's almost like we are becoming the producer. When I say producer, I mean traditional type producer, like a Rick Rubin or something like that. We're becoming the producer rather than lost inside our own process.